Okay, so we'll kick off the second portion of this one. Again, it's all about communication. Johnny, you can go to the next slide. Some of the things we're going to talk about for crew discussion, a little different than what what Ben and Larry had covered, but some of the stuff does intermingle. We'll talk about before the game, what you talk with the commissioner about, your partners, the host site, coaches' cards, a little bit. That's already been covered. Mr. Becker will take over and talk about the pregame, the 5 pillars, the 3 Ps, on-court pregame with the coaches, in-game items, special situations, late game items, and then final thoughts. I'll take over and we'll talk about halftime, the temperature check. How are the coaches and the players? Did we have any huge calls in the first half we need to talk about? And then adjustments we need to make maybe for the second half. And then we'll finish this up with some post-game analysis and reflection. And we lost the presentation, Mr. Becker. Looks like we lost Mr. Becker completely.
We lost Becker.
Give me a second. I'll see if I can get him back. He is not in here.
When the person driving the bus leaves the bus, that's a bit of a problem.
He is obviously not in the right seat.
Is this what we talk about by suddenly have to do a game 2, man? Is this what
maybe.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Maybe COVID got him.
First lesson of the season, last minute 2-man adjustment.
Goodness gracious. Well,
You want me
Patrick,
to roll
share it, or can you share it with me? Or
I can share
you
my
can drive,
screen.
Will?
We can just go.
Yeah, you can drive. There you go.
All right. I got to do this every day for a living as well as a teacher. So let's go. All right, good to go. See that?
Yep. So you can keep clicking.
Yes.
So before the game, first things first, crew communication and your assignment. So you need to talk, keep going, Will. You need to talk to your assigner. You need to confirm, all of you need to confirm your game assignment information as appropriate, however the commissioner or assigner of that league wants you to confirm games with them. You need to confirm with your partners. Typically, this is the lead official in John's leagues. The lead official is the top official listed on the game. They're responsible for most of the communication. Communicate with your partners. What time are we getting there? I think everybody's going to be driving separately this year, which is one of the COVID guidelines. So that kind of is negated there. But what door are we entering? That kind of thing. The top lead official needs to communicate with the host site, the athletic director, confirm for your crew. What time? You know, I'll send an email out to the AD on a Monday for a Friday game and say, Jon Becker, Will Meier, and Patrick Crider have been assigned to work your varsity girls game on Friday at 5:30 p.m. Arbiter shows the tip-off is in the South Gym at Olathe South. Please confirm the details of this game are accurate and let us know what door you want us to come in and where you want us to park. Something to that nature. And if the AD doesn't respond by Wednesday-ish, sometimes Thursday, depending on my day job, how busy I am, I'll follow back up and say, hey, I haven't heard back from you. Do you have any updates for me? And then on the coaches' cards, that's kind of a crew decision. Ben makes some fantastic cards. I usually defer to him. I work from home and have for the last, dozen years or so, and I have a really nice color laser printer, and that's about the only thing I print on it anymore. So I print cards for most of my games that I'm on the crew for. But it's just a crew decision. Whoever has the best cards or wants to put forth the effort to make them can make them. Next slide. You guys, this is going to get old quick, and I understand that, but in my opinion, you cannot hear this enough. Do not work if you don't feel well. Do not work if you have a fever over 100 degrees. They're common sense at this point. As we heard Tuesday night in Dehan's portion of the call to game meeting, you contact your assigner if you have any symptoms of the virus, and then he will notify the schools and your partners. Discuss with your crew beforehand, the driving, the masks. Masks are not optional. In some cases in the Kansas City, Kansas schools, you're going to be wearing a mask if you're running up and down the floor. Outside of the KCK schools, you'll be wearing a mask if you're in their building, and pretty much anytime you're not running up and down the floor. So just make it a habit. Hand sanitizer. I think somebody mentioned Tuesday, putting it in your back pocket. Just, you can't hear it enough. Wear a mask, protect yourself, protect others. We all want to work this season. We all want to have a complete basketball season. That will never happen if we don't all work together and follow some of these simple things. I think that's it. The next slide, I think, is Mr. Becker. Is Mr. Becker back?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh my goodness, and we can see you.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
Here we go.
yes, we can, John.
So, look, we all know that the pregame is going to set the tone for the game this evening or that evening. A good pregame is going to set the tone in terms of getting our minds focused so we can eliminate some of the white noise that's going on around us. It sets the tone for unexpected occurrences like Larry and Ben just talked about. It sets the tone and provides a foundation to make sure that all officials are on the same page that evening. We've all experienced where we've been on the court and we just feel like we're not on the same page with our partner or partners. And a good pregame, an extensive and detailed pregame, is going to eliminate a lot of those potentials. So my pregame, for those that have been partners with me, my pregame is long and detailed. Just ask Dehan, who walked out in the middle of probably my finest point on my pregame, and they ghosted me. But I don't necessarily cover every detail. If I recently worked with my partners or if we have extensive history together, but there are some non-negotiables, some basic reminders that should always be discussed. Court coverage.
Hey, John, let me interrupt you. Why don't you tell people who you are and a little bit about yourself real quick before you go much further.
I apologize. I'm Jon Becker. Started officiating about 18 years ago in Illinois when I was an educator, like many on this call. And then moved a couple job changes, moved out to the Kansas City area. Heard about this guy named Mike Etnar and started working for Mike. And then John took over and here I am. So I've been privileged to work with some outstanding officials, both in Illinois as well as here in the state of Kansas. And worked postseason for the past several years, had a privilege to do that as well. So that's me. Thank you, Patrick, for the reminder on that. So I'm going to spend several minutes this evening talking about the pregame. A lot of this is going to be 30,000-foot view. I may dip down into the weeds a little bit, but hopefully keep that to a minimum as much as possible. And the bottom line is, if you guys want a copy of my pregame, just email me or reach out to me and I'll send it over to you. You'll note right off the bat that I've stolen parts of my pregame from others. And you should do that too. If it works and if it makes sense, then use it, because we're all in this together, right? So one of the first things that I talk about in my pregame is Frank Bell's 5 pillars. You can see them on the screen there. Those are great discussion points and may prompt a good conversation with your crewmates. And the other thing, Patrick, go ahead to the next slide. The other thing that I stole from Josh Roberts is the 3 Ps: positioning, primary, discipline, and patience, which are very, very similar to in philosophy to Frank's 5 pillars. And again, they may prompt a good discussion about certain items, which is really important, because the goal for all of us is to discuss ways to increase our percent of correct calls or correct no calls, right? So let's make sure we get on the same page so we can increase our percentage of correct calls and correct no calls. So the next thing that I'll do is I'll break the ice. And typically what I do is just ask a question about sharing a unique play or a unique scenario that maybe one of us has experienced over the past few weeks. That would be a good sharing story, and a story not to gossip, but rather to have it be a teachable moment that could potentially be applied for all of us, this evening. How it would apply, what did we learn from that situation in the past. So this is a good opportunity for everybody to share potentially and kind of break the ice with the crew, especially if you haven't worked with one or two of them. Then I'll get into some of my detailed information, and you can go ahead and click, Patrick.
Well, Will's driving, but thank you.
Oh, Willie. So then the next thing that I'll talk about is the pregame on the court. And Ben and Larry went over this in detail this evening, so I'll just do again a 30,000 foot view. But we're going to, especially early in the season, it's important to just do a few reminders. What time are we going on the court? What time are we crossing and having the coaches and captains meeting? It looks like we're not going to have a captains meeting per se this year, but the coaches meeting is going to be more on the floor. But let's talk through some of these responsibilities so we know who's doing what, just as a reminder to make sure it flows smoothly, especially talking about uniforms and other equipment, whether it be hair or sleeves or whatever it is, just as a reminder to make sure we know what's legal and what isn't. So that's very, very important. And then the only other thing regarding the coaches meeting is to stress that coaching box. We've heard it from Fran year after year now. There's no reason for them to be out. And let's make sure that we're gently reminding of that, or firmly reminding them of that as we go forward. So now in game, just go back to A, please, Willie. Thank you. So now I have a number of different in-game items that are good discussion points that should be talked about. And the first one is pace of the game. I always start off talking about this because, and I'm sure many on this call can relate to the fact that probably 90% of the time when we get ourselves in trouble, it's because we're hurrying up, we're speeding up. So we control the pace. Let's make sure that we slow down. We know what we're talking about. We don't leave the scene of the crime. If we have a foul or something like that, let's make sure we stay with everything instead of leaving and all of a sudden we have a scuffle or a problem behind us. So that's pace. Go ahead. And next is court coverage. The next thing we talk about is court coverage in a fair amount of detail, but we should have a conversation about who has what. If we're in the half court, when am I giving up the ball to one of my partners? If we're talking about full court coverage, pressing coverage, what are we talking about is the C's responsibility. There's a number of different things we should be talking about with coverage, and especially with primary matchups for us. And then the other thing that I talk about with court coverage is flexing. And my personal philosophy on flexing is more rather than less. I remember for many years, flexing was something that I was reluctant to do, and I was always hesitating down there. And then if I would flex across and then the ball or the matchups that are most important for lead all of a sudden are on the other side, and I'm thinking to myself, man, my partners are going to think I'm a knucklehead if I flex all the way back. And then you think to yourself, hey, John, they already think you're a knucklehead. How about getting over to the other side so you can take care of officiating, your matchup? So we should be talking about flexing in great amount of detail in our pregame. Go ahead and next one, please, is consistency of the crew. Consistency regarding automatics are very important, as well as making sure we communicate about how we're going to set the tone in the game, set the tone in terms of early travels or moving screens, what we're looking for there. Set the tone in terms of a reminder about verticality and what is legal guarding position for the defense. Having a conversation regarding consistency about, and many people have heard this term and used this term. Some think it's a little controversial, but making sure that similar plays have similar results. And I am a proponent of that, although the next thing that I always say is, let's keep in mind that we could have a charge on one end and then have a block at the other end. And if we got a charge on one end and a block at the other end, if they're the right calls, then they're the right calls, and we're going to live with that. But if we can make sure that similar plays have similar results, that's probably a good thing. We just can't spend a lot of time trying to figure out, keeping track of one 50-50 versus another. That's not something that we want to get into. The other thing I talk about in terms of consistency is crashes in the paint. Most block charge situations are with a secondary defender, so we want to give lead first crack at that. If we have a double whistle, we're talking about blowing and holding. That goes back to our patience and slowing down. And that's consistency. So go ahead. And the next one is teamwork. I've worked with a number of different partners who didn't like to make eye contact. And I think that's really important, that we're looking at each other and making eye contact. There's a lot of unspoken communication that goes on with eye contact. And a lot of times it comes down to the calling official has a play. What are we going to do? We need to communicate with our partners. Fran has said it many times. We have a call. The first thing we're going to do is observe, and then a preliminary signal. And then we're going to tell our partners and everybody in the stands what we're doing. We're shooting, the ball's out of bounds, where's it out of bounds, and go from there. So let's make sure that we do that as well. If we have free throw shooters, good teamwork is having the partners making sure they have the shooter ready to go. Double whistle. I've gotten myself in trouble with this. I and a partner have a double whistle. I try to give it up to them the very same instance that they're trying to give it up to me. And by then I've lost who the foul was on. And so if we have good teamwork, we can make sure we can communicate and get that foul on the right gal or guy in that instance. And I think we all can relate to going to the table. We just had a foul and we're putting the ball out of bounds. We go to the table and the table's going like this at us. And then we got to turn around and figure out, well, okay, the shooter was tall and dark haired, and I think they had a pimple on their forehead. Hey, let's get good teamwork so we can communicate before we get to the 1-and-1 on that. Next one is game management. We should be talking about tonight's style of play. Has anyone had either of the teams previously? Do they press? Are they in a zone? Are we going to see a lot of screens tonight? Is there going to be some post play that we're really going to have to be on top of? These are things that we should talk about in terms of game management. Talk players out of issues early. Those that don't officiate don't realize how much we do use our voice. Even if they don't see you, if they hear your voice, that may clean up a lot of issues before it gets into a problem. Speaking of problems, we need to identify potentially some problem children as early as possible. We've all been in games where all of a sudden there's a couple of turds in the punch bowl, and it makes it rough if we're not taking care of game management early on with that. So let's watch for game escalators. I think all of us that have had problems that got really bad or out of control at some point in the game, we can go back to game film and look and see there were a couple game escalators that we either missed or minimized at the time, that if we would have handled those a little bit better or a little bit differently, it probably would have helped control what happened later in the game. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, but if we're watching for game escalators, it's really going to help us. Larry and Ben talked about dead ball officiating tonight. They talked about how they would communicate with the coaches. we don't need to go over that again. So let's click to the next one, which is point of emphasis. Over the past several years, we've had a number of very strong point of emphasis. We should go over those in our pregame, whether it be rhythm, speed, balance, quickness, the automatics, if we're talking about post play, if we're talking about swinging elbows or whatever the case may be. Points of emphasis are really, they're, point of emphasis for a reason. Let's take care of that and communicate about that. Next one is hustle and focus. I said it earlier, if we can get ourselves in position, our percent of correct calls and correct no calls is going to be way high. So let's make sure we hustle and know where we're getting so we can get there. And then focus. Dean Pierce has had to talk me off the ledge a number of times over the years because I feel like I missed a call in the first quarter and I'm still worrying about it in the second quarter. So we as officials really need to have a short memory and put that behind us so we don't worry about the one that we may have just missed and then miss the next one as well. So these are things that if we talk about them before the game, we have a high likelihood of making sure we're doing that during the game. And then lastly, in the in-game emphasis portion is timeouts. I got this from Patrick. It's great. Just slow down. Here we go again with slow down. Slow down when you are reporting a timeout. There's no need to hurry over to the table. Let's make sure that all the players get to their benches and especially be on high alert with our radar if players are crossing to get to their benches. Then after that, everybody's there. We make sure everybody's good. Then we can report the timeout, start the clock, and go from there. There's no reason to hurry through that. And then the other thing that we need to do is be consistent with breaking the huddles. Remember, the first horn is for the coach. The second horn is for us to get going. So let's get them out on the first huddle. If one partner is doing a good job of getting the players out of one team's huddle on the first horn, and the other partner is letting the coach have 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 more seconds, that's pretty soon that's going to catch up to us, and that's not going to look good. So let's be consistent on timeouts. Okay, next slide, please. And the next slide is special situations. A lot of this has been talked about this evening. I'm going to make it short and sweet, just a couple things. Like they already said, Ben and Larry, like they already said, if something doesn't feel right, if the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, then ask the question. So let's do that because the most important thing is to get the call right. Let's make sure we're getting the call right. So we have warnings. The warning is in our hip pocket. Let's use it. But keep in mind, we're given one warning to the coach, not one warning for each official. So if we give the warning, make sure it gets in the book and make sure that everybody in the gym, especially our partners, but everybody in the gym knows that a warning has been given. So we don't have to get in a situation where we're given more than one. Double whistle. Let's just communicate, especially on a pass and crash. Go ahead and click to the next one, Willie. In fact, click the next two. We can combine double foul and intentional foul. We've talked about those this evening, and anything above a common foul. Let's just make sure we slow down. Let's get the numbers right. Make sure we know what we're doing with the ball and where we're doing it. And then the technical foul. The only thing that I'll add about this, and I've told this story many times over the years, my very first technical foul in the state of Illinois, it was on a coach. I was mad. I'm sure my heart was racing and my face was red. I reported at the table. I turned around and the ball happened to be on the floor right there. Nobody had picked it up. So I went to 4 or 5 feet over. I picked up the ball. I made sure that I was tall when I was running down to the basket to administer the free throws. I turned around. I was at the wrong basket. And who looked like the knucklehead there, right? So, over the years, as I've told that story, I realized that I should have been more aware of what I was doing, but my partners didn't do me any favors there either. So let's make sure that anytime that we have a special situation, especially a technical foul, that you go not straight to the table to report it, but straight to your closest partner. And if you are the closest partner, make sure you get in between the calling official and the table, and just make sure they're telling you what they have and what we're going to do next. If we can take care of that, that'll also give the calling official a few seconds to calm down, to make sure they have their head on straight, and we can make sure we're adjudicating properly. So that's all I'll say about that. The next one is a fight. The only thing I'll say about that is let's make sure we get numbers. We absolutely have to break up the fight as best we can, but get numbers. If you're close to the table, then it may not hurt to start hollering numbers at the scorer. We got white 11 and white 22. We got red 50 and red 10. And we need to try to keep the benches on the bench. Those are really important. The next two you can click together, Willie. If we have a special situation like goaltending or basket interference, let's make sure we're communicating. And the same thing with a blarge. I've been involved with a blarge. Pretty sure it was my fault. And to make matters worse, the basket went in. So that really had us scratching our heads trying to figure it out. If you're not sure what to do on a blarge when the basket goes through, you can reach out to me later and we can talk about it. But if we're communicating and having these discussions before the game, it sure looks good when we get on the floor and one of these weird, special, unique situations does happen. Okay, next slide. And it's late game. Again, something that's been covered a little bit tonight. For me, the thought process is to think like a coach, just like Ben and Larry said, think like a coach, filter like an official. So a coach may want a timeout, but if they don't have the ball, they're not getting it. And we just need to be aware of those particular situations. Go ahead and click the next one. Timeouts, especially late game timeouts, the thing to remember, we have to have 6 eyes on that clock to make sure we have definite knowledge if we're putting something back on, because the timer and the scorekeeper, they're human, so we need to make sure that we have definite knowledge if we're going to do something about that. And anything under 1 minute, let's communicate. Let's know who has the last shot, but don't forget to continue to flex. Just because we're under a minute doesn't mean we stop officiating our matchups. So get to where you need to get to officiate the matchups that you need to take care of. So don't stop officiating, and that includes flexing. Remember that. And then on the last second, the coverage in the clock on the last second, bottom line is everybody should help out on a last second shot and get to, just like Chance said Tuesday night, let's make sure we're getting to wherever we need to get to have a view of that call. So let's get in position to where we need to be. Final thoughts. I get teased for this saying, but I still like it. You can click one bullet point because I think it's up there. Be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Okay, what does that mean? Well, remember, a thermometer is based on the temperature around it. And that shouldn't be us during a game. We should be a thermostat. A thermostat sets the temperature. So when the fans' temperature starts going up, when the kids' temperature starts going up, when the coach's temperature starts going up, let's not be a thermometer and match that temperature that's going up. Let's be a thermometer and set our temperature where we need to be. Calm, making sure we take care of business, especially if we had a good pregame. Patrick, I'm going to toss it back to you for halftime.
Okay. The host stopped my video, which I'm totally fine with. I'll just speak. I do want to answer a question that came up real quick too, because I think this is important, and I believe we have some clinicians on this evening, and I would like them to hear this answer as well. The question came out, how about when one clinician tells you one thing and another says the exact opposite, contradicting them? So you have two clinicians telling you two separate things. We have got to set our egos aside. We're all trying to get better, and we're all trying to do the same thing the right way. I would, if you came to me as a clinician and said, well, that clinician, Jon Becker, just told me something different, I'm going to take you and I'm going to go over to Jon Becker and I'm going to say, hey, let's talk this out because we need to have the right, same answer. And let's get it figured out. The last thing we want anybody to do is leave a clinic or a camp with that thought, is those clinicians don't even, they're not telling us the same things. One will tell you something, and another one will tell you another thing. We don't want you leaving with that impression. So my opinion is tell that clinician that's not what I heard from Jon Becker. Can we hash that out and so I know the right answer? That would be how I would prefer you handle that. And we as clinicians need to be able to deal with that. Okay, so mine, and you can click through it all, Willie, just for the sake of time.
Check your camera again, see if that fixes it.
Oh, Ben, look at Ben. Okay, halftime. It's very brief, but it is a crucial time where we can come together, we can catch our breath, take a minute, get some water, and just assess how the game is going. And then kind of discuss what we need to do differently for the second half. So you can go to the next slide, Will. For the temperature check, assessing how the game's doing. How's the crew? I'll use Mr. Becker as an example. Do we have angry John tonight? You know, has a coach said something that pissed off one of your crewmates? Is a fan gotten under somebody's skin? Are we cohesive as a crew still? How are the coaches? Is one coach upset? Are both coaches upset? Have they asked us questions that, you know, they're all asking us the same question repeatedly, or are they not talking to us at all? Have they shut us off? Same thing with the players. Do we have a problem child? I think John mentioned the turd in the punch bowl. Do we have a player that we need to maybe keep an eye on? How's the table? Every time I go to report to the table, I have to get their attention. Something like that. I've been in a contest where I go to the table and the person keeping the book is looking down, writing something, and I'm standing there and I'm ready to report and I'm just waiting. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. Every once in a while I may have to go or, hey, here we go. Something to get their attention. But, you know, how's the table doing? And then last, do we have any fan or crowd issues? Ben and Larry kind of touched on that a little bit. We don't want to address them directly, but do we have any issues we do need to address? So that's your temperature check during halftime. So you can keep going. Any big calls? Do we have any impactful calls or impactful non-calls? We've all had that one where there's a crash in the paint and there's not a whistle to be heard and we play on. And then we get into halftime, we probably need to talk about that. Or we had a big crash in the paint and we had a whistle and we reported it to the table, we play on, we get into halftime, we talk about that, and one of your partners says, I saw it a little differently. Talk about those things. Going back to the player issues, did we have any technicals or intentional fouls in the first half where we need to be aware of in the second half if they get a second one and they need to be ejected? Same thing for the coach. Did we have any technicals on the coach? Did we have any warnings? I didn't list that, but if the coach has been warned in the first half, second half isn't a fresh restart, that warning is still in the books. And if they stop over the line, it's a T now. It's not another warning. So we need to talk about those things. And then the next slide, I think, is it. Just adjustments based on what we just talked about. Do we need to call anything differently than we called in the first half? Hopefully the answer is no. But sometimes, listen, we let the hand checks go a little on the perimeter. We need to wrap that up. We need to fix that. We need to call that correctly. Post play. Is the post play getting increasingly more physical? Is there anything that we need to go out and address before the game even starts the second half, such as players? That player that got a technical in the first half. I remember a game at Olathe North where Dehan and Will Meier and I were working, and a player from Olathe North was having some issues with his temperament. I think that's a fair statement. The first thing we did is I went out to him. I was the R, I think, if I remember correctly. I went out and I talked to him face to face, and I said, look, we're doing everything we can to keep you in the game, but you cannot continue acting like you're acting. The next one, you're gone. And I'm just very honest with him. Some of us on the call can get away with that. Some of us can't. Some may need to go to the coach and say, hey, we're having a real issue with number 5. Can you help us out? And the coach says, what is he doing? Well, he's running his mouth or he's taunting his opponents. In whatever we need to do to fix that situation, let's fix it. And then the same thing, do we need to address any coaches? Coach, listen, we listened to you bark the entire first half about everything. Pick and choose your battles. Ask questions. We'll respond to your questions. We can't listen to you just bicker at every call. Address those things. It's much easier and it'll help the game flow better if you address the issues versus letting them go. And I think that is it for me. Nice, quick, and sweet. So Will, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I start by introducing myself for those who don't know me. Will Meier. I've been refereeing 18 years, much like Jon said. I started in college with Timmy Z, and I've been registered for 12 years with Keisha. Been fortunate enough to work state the last 4 or 5 years, and work with a lot of people on this call, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm an educator by my day job as well, which I found helps me a lot because it's all about communication. So I'm going to back up just a little bit before I hit my 2 slides. So we've got about 5-10 minutes here and try to get you guys out of here. But I will vouch for what Ben Booth said about coaches not knowing the rules always, because Ben was a coach when I was in high school. So I think that speaks for itself. So, all right, crew analysis. We're going to talk about post game here. So first of all, we get into that locker room, and it's just that at first, after you breathe that sigh or whatever it is, you just say, hey, how do we feel the game went? And that can be individually and as a crew. I know a lot of times I'll speak up, especially if it's a crew, you're used to working with, and say, I thought we did a good job, crew. Or I thought, hey, we left some stuff out there, or it was a little choppy, or we didn't have our best game. And then I'll speak individually for myself, and then we'll go from there. So that's always that first reflection that we want to go over, why it's fresh in your mind. Big question is, did we impact the game or the outcome? I mean, you always hear that, we need to not decide the winner, and the players decide that. But there's a lot of ways we can impact the game or the outcome. And did we do it negatively, or did we, do our job the right way? And are people going to, remember that we were working the game, or people are going to remember of, hey, I know the officials were good, I just can't remember who they were. And that's kind of what we're shooting for, So we say sometimes, the best team win. And as we said back in that original slide when Ben and Larry Hare were talking about, hey, we don't care who wins. We are the only ones in the gym who are truly objective. So we just want to make sure we didn't impact it negatively. Any unusual situations? This is the kind of the elephant in the room sometimes about what stuff that comes up, and a lot of it's out of your control, but you have to be able to adjudicate it and administer it correctly, and that's one thing why it's right there fresh in our brain. Did we handle them correctly? Jon Becker attested to a Blarge call. I know Dehan's always great about sharing his stories and his teapot stories, but that Blarge call that Jon had was with myself. And that's one of those that, hey, we still weren't sure, and we had to go in the rule book to figure it out, and that's unfortunately sometimes what Amy and Chance talked about last night. You got to get in the rule book over and over and over, but there's just so much that you have to know that sometimes you learn the hard way, and you don't want to have to do that. But the important takeaway is to make the mistake once, and then never make that mistake again should it happen, so you want to address that right there. Did we handle it correctly? Also, if there's a Keisha report, who's going to do that? That's sometimes up to the commissioners as far as, do they want the R to do it? Do they want the person listed first? At the end of the day, though, you just got to, before you leave that locker room, make sure one of you guys, gals, handles the Keisha report. If it's an unusual situation, it can be positive or negative. You have to enter that report. And as Fran will tell you, and Ben tells you now, and Frank used to tell us when he was area supervisor, just state the facts and don't put an opinion in there, and use as few words as possible, because that goes to multiple people. Did we have any technical fouls? That's always one, along with there's unusual situations. It can be an impactful call, obviously, with the assessment of multiple free throws and the ball. But that's just the game thing that gets your heart rate going, and something that, something coaches can turn in on film, or that's something that carries over. And that's something that we need to let assigners know as well, especially if it's on a coach. And that's a loss of coach's box. So we need to put that in the report as well. But also we need to talk about, did we miss any? I know Patrick just alluded to a call or a discussion with an Olathe North player one time. And I feel like there was sometimes in that game, maybe we could have got a technical foul early, which would have helped us as a crew, control that player or that game more, and sometimes we give benefit of the doubt, especially if we are, veteran officials, or we feel like we have a good rapport with players and kind of try to talk them through it. Well, at the end of the day, sometimes they burn you, so we need to make sure in the locker room that we, just as important as did we call any or did we miss any? And then, as I mentioned, do we need to notify Keisha and who? If you're not ever sure, then you need to talk to your assigner, and they will 100% tell you, you need to notify Keisha, and you need to call that night. An easy way to do it is when you're on your way home, hands-free, of course, and all that good stuff. But before you even get in your car, maybe call your assigner if you're not sure, and that way they know to tell you to notify Keisha, who else you need to. As I mentioned, you notify the assigner. I know Jon always tells you if it's on a coach, 100%, and a player, if it's on sporting, you could probably let them know too on that. Did we have any calls or non-calls we want back? There's always some, and this is something that, it's down on the bottom of the list because all this stuff should take precedent. But there's always going to be calls or non-calls we want back. I've yet to work a perfect game, no doubt. And I'm sure everybody on this call will agree. But it's just, what do we do? How do we learn? And just like Chance and Amy talked about last night, the video, we watch a video to see if we're in the right position. We always want to see if we got it right or not, but we watch that video to see if we're in the right position. And then it's just a question of seeing plays and knowing what we got or what we didn't get right, correct. So, and that's something that, as a fraternity of officials, we have to have the integrity and the honesty and the trust with one another to, let someone else, comment on our game, and that's something that I learned from some of my mentors is, a lot of officials will not, speak up, saying, hey, I disagreed with that call unless you specifically ask them. And that's something, a good piece of knowledge for some of you younger referees coming up is if you want that feedback, that's awesome. But that's something you should probably ask for, and we'll be willing to tell you. And obviously we tell you the truth, because we want you to learn just like we were told. But we may not be as forthcoming with that knowledge unless you ask. But some of the veterans we worked with, that's something that, hey, you kind of be like, hey, what'd you see there? Or, hey, from my angle, I thought we could have had something, and that's how we all can learn together. And then also, did we do what we talked about? I know Becker's pregame is famous/infamous at this point, but there's plenty to talk about there, and we need to do that. Hey, yeah, we're going to come out and we're going to, the first whistle is important, and we're going to control, the extracurricular stuff. And then if we, at the end of the day, didn't do that, that's on us, so that's why we need to rediscuss everything that we talked about at pregame, like Jon said, and also at halftime, like Patrick said. Last slide. These are your personal reflections. Was I consistent with the crew throughout? And this may be just in your head. This may be, on the way home, or this may be while you're watching film. Jon's and some of our signers are great enough to get film, so we can do that evaluation or that personal reflection. So was I consistent with the crew throughout, both with your calls and with your partner's calls? What could I have done better? Again, going back to that, hey, you never, just like player or coach never really did a perfect game, neither did we. So what can I improve? How can I get better from game to game and season to season? And you really have to be honest with yourself on that. Whether it's a positioning, whether it's communication, whether it's a judgment, whether it's a patient whistle, all those things we talk about. This one, this is something that, if you've ever not done this, it's really hard to sleep, and this is one of the worst, I think, feelings as an official is if you didn't give the kids and coaches the best effort. We all have day jobs. We all have families, we all have things that we have off the court, and it seems like when you bring those off the court problems on the court, that's where this can affect you. So you need to clear all that. And especially in this time in COVID, I know ref in football with Becker and some other guys on our great crew is that's, we said the other day, that's like 3 hours that I really don't have to worry about well, I mean, I have to worry about COVID because our masks and our gaiters, but I don't have to worry about problems outside, forces. So if you can truly answer that, you gave your kids and the coaches the best effort. That's what you want. We're all going to learn, and you're all going to make mistakes, but the things you can always control are your effort, and your attitude, and that leads to giving your best effort. Did I have fun? That's why we're in it. We obviously were affected by sports positively growing up, and we want to give back. But we're not doing it for the money. We're not doing it for the abuse, the exercise, all that plays into it. But you gotta have fun. Brian Watson always says it best is, it's a lot more fun to be good for sure, but we gotta have fun out there. Any specific things I need to work on? Again, if you're truly honest with yourself, you can always find one thing, to carry over to that next game. You don't want to beat yourself up, and you don't want to try to work on multiple things because there's enough stuff you got to worry about. But over the course of, a week or two, or even a season, maybe you find one or two things that you really need to work on in your game. And you just pick some more the next year or that summer. That's all I really have on post game. So Patrick or John or, anybody else on here, if you want to pick up where I left off, or if we just want to wrap it up here.
Will, thank you. And John, thank you. So I want to address a couple of questions that are in the chat and the Q&A piece. And Mr. Dehan, if you are still awake, this one is for you. I'm registered in Missouri. Do I need to register in Kansas? And maybe Dehan can't speak.
I'm still here. I'm still here. I was trying to get my mute button there. Yes, if you want to work any high school games on the Kansas side, you must reciprocate with the state of Kansas. It's $15. You can call the state tomorrow. Go to Kasia.org, and their phone number is at the very bottom. It's 785-573-5329, I do believe, but don't quote me on that. For $15, you can reciprocate. You don't have to take any tests. You don't have to go to any of the meetings. But you can still work. You're not eligible for postseason at the varsity level, but it's a good start.
Thank you. Fran, if you're out there, which I believe that you are, there was a question here that I thought you might be able to address. Concerning the comment made about getting registered for postseason and needing every official we possibly can to be postseason eligible. Officials are going to camps using the things that they've learned in those sessions and getting votes, but are not getting postseason games. How do you get postseason games?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see that question. So how do you get postseason games? Well, the first thing you've got to do is be eligible to do that. And that means completing the exam and the rules meeting and the 2 area meetings. Then after that, honestly, we have schools that provide us recommendations. We have league commissioners that provide us recommendations. And we have area supervisors that provide us recommendations. So, in some areas of the state, like where you guys are, is it a little bit harder to get postseason games? Probably, because there are more officials available there. If you live in Southeast Kansas or Northwest Kansas, and you've worked some games and, a league commissioner has recommended you, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get an opportunity to work some. If the more you're seen, I'm just going to be honest with you, the more you're seen, whether it's at a camp or a clinic or, you've gone to a game as a JV official and stayed to watch the varsity guys and came into the locker room and talked to them, the more you're seen and people see you wanting to get better, the better chance you have of your name getting out there. But I will tell you that particularly when we're trying to fill maybe not our state positions, but some of our lead up games to the state, the lists that we get with up and coming officials that are recommended by our league commissioners and area supervisors are used a lot. So I know we count on schools for recommendations because they want officials that they're comfortable with, but we use the information from our league commissioners and area supervisors. And frankly, a lot of that I think comes out of opportunities for at camps and clinics. So, I would encourage you to make sure that you get out there and let people know who you are.
I'd like to add to that. This is my 29th year. It took me 12 years before I even sniffed one sub-state game. So patience is a key as well, because there's an establishment that's out there, and coaches know the people that have been working for a while, and they're comfortable with those people. The thing I get is that coaches always want new blood, but they don't want it on their court. So we need some patience when it comes time to get to postseason.
Well, and another thing to build on what you said, John, reach out to your assigner, the person that you're working games for. Come watch me work, or ask the question, what are the things I need to do to get better? Because I really want to work postseason. What do you see that I need to improve? And if you know John Dehan, he's going to be honest with you. And I would hope that all of the other area assigners are going to do the same thing, because they want better officials too. So I would encourage you to have they're painful conversations. I had it with John several years back. What do I need to do to get better? And on top of that, you have to be able to be willing to take that feedback and make some changes. Amy Bonner put up a fantastic graphic on Tuesday night about who you see when you look in the mirror. If you look in the mirror and you see Adonis and nothing needs to change, then you're probably not giving yourself the right shot. So you got to be able to be willing to make change and take constructive criticism and feedback.
I'll add to that, Patrick, really quick, is that that's the whole reason why we formed KSOA, is that I can't get out to see everybody. And the association's been very good. Obviously, this year's going to be an exception, but last year was very good about getting out and evaluating, observing both sub-varsity and varsity folks. And I see every one of those. When Larry's out there, I see every one of those. So I read those evaluations, as well as any other KSOA assigner has access to them. That's it.
Okay. Ben, Larry, I want to give you guys a minute or so. If there's anything you guys need to add, I think we're pretty much done. And in case you have anything else you want to cover.
No, on my end, just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate the trust and the opportunity to visit and connect with everybody. As was said in Ocean's 11, it's nice to be working with proper villains again. So it's good to have the group back together to get into the season, which will be extremely unique, and just looking forward to collaborating with everyone.
Well, thank you, Larry.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Well, with that, guys, thank you very, very much for your time. Again, as I mentioned at the onset, your attendance is very much appreciated. I hope you got something out of tonight. I hope you got something out of Tuesday night. Stay safe, and let's all hope collectively that we can get through a full season safely and healthy. So with that, we'll say good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and good night.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.